In a world where good comics are made into bad movies, three nerds with their Overstreet price guides at the ready fight to educate you about the truth of the best comic book stories. The hour of comics is upon us with hosts John Seymour, Keith Bliss, and Jason Gurin.
Yeah, today we don't have a guest because uh I don't know what it is about today or yesterday. Like I just could not get anyone. So it's just the three of us.
It's been so long. We're all guests at this
We,
point.
we
Yeah,
are we
right.
are we are all
We're all
guests.
strangers.
Let's see if I even remember how to do this. I'm trying to a little bit of a different format this time because I don't know. I like listened back to my previous episodes and the parts where I'm just like reading off of the description of the story. I don't know. I kind of get I start thinking about sheep jumping over fences and then I fall asleep. So trying this a different way.
Well, it's a good reference point though, where
It
if you're like, oh, remember that blah 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 point in the story, and then we kind of take it from there. But yeah, I get what you're saying because literally you're just like on panel three, yada yada yada, blah 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 blah, and
yeah.
you're like, uh-huh.
Well, I mean, you know, part of it is because everything was like, I read the thing and then I was like, okay, let's record today. And then I worked and then I came home and I never actually had a chance to write out a synopsis for myself. So
Hmm.
I'm doing it this way. So, that's if whoever's listening doesn't like it, I don't know why. I don't even like, hey, at least you're listening to begin with. And
Fair.
that's nice. That's nice. So
There.
let's start off with a swig of my whiskey here. And you
You're
ever see
Jack and Coke.
you ever see red whiskey?
I mean, the whiskey has that tannish hue to it, so it could
Yeah.
theoretically look reddish under a certain light.
All right. Wow. Like it has been really such a long time. I'm just sort of like, okay, we're talking here. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Um,
Why are we
we're
here?
we're doing giant size X-Men #1. What was this? 1974? This
75.
is it 75?
Yeah, close
Okay, so
enough.
close to, yeah, 74, 75. Like either way, if you were born on the year that this comic came out or before, you are officially old, essentially. Sorry.
Or if you were
Hey,
reading the comic as a teenager, you're definitely old.
Yeah, right. If you
yeah,
remember when this
true.
came out or were reading it in 75, you old.
It's like if you bought it for your kids, then you are definitely old. So,
Fair.
all right. So this is giant size X-Men #1. The writer and editor is Len Wein or Wine, Wein. I don't know how to actually pronounce that. The illustrator is Dave Cockrum, which I can't read that without laughing. Cockrum.
Well, you got Ween and Cockrum, so we're
Yeah,
we're off to a great
Yeah,
start.
you
we're
got
batting a thousand right here.
Ween and Cock, and that's. I mean, so we're done with the episode. All right, thank you very much for
That's it.
listening,
Thanks
and
for coming,
that's it.
everybody.
No one even cares anymore. So,
Well, yeah,
all
it's a wrap.
right.
Thanks.
All right, so if anyone is even curious, beyond this, we have another Ween whose name is Glynis Ween, who is the colorist, the person who colored in the comic, and the person who made the letters is John Costanza, like George Costanza,
Like
except
George.
John.
It's his
Right.
cousin.
So cousin George Costanza. So um I mean, I guess let's just do like something of an overview and I can kind of like piece together what I remember of it from reading it last night. Like Jason, what were your thoughts on this comic here?
I mean, it's just a classic comic at this point,
Mm,
and I haven't read the book in years up until today.
yeah.
And it's just crazy how these stories have been told so many times. These origins of all these different new X-Men coming in. I feel like as I was reading it, I was like, wait a minute, I know all this already because it's been done so many times and then retconned so many times and then done over again so many times. But gotta say, I really enjoyed it. It was a fun, classic 70s style comic where they just kind of threw everything together. The villain was a little crazy and it was
Oh
it was it
boy.
was just a lot of setup. It was a lot of setup for things to come, but they did a great job setting it all up.
That villain was my jam. Keith,
Sir.
your thoughts on this book?
I have to say that I give them credit for how they started the book. You're right in the thick of it. You see Nightcrawler being chased by angry villagers, and like it's just literally like page 1 is craziness, page 2 is craziness, and like it just stacks up on top of that. So you're already in the thick of it even on page 1. So they set your expectations accordingly, which is funny because you see stuff nowadays and it's just like a very slow burn. Meanwhile, literally page 1 is Wagner being chased by angry villagers like Frankenstein's monster. And you're like, okay. And then the next page is Wolverine threatening to slice somebody's whatever, cuts his tie and threatens him with one of his claws. And you're like, well, shit, let's go from here. And it kind of keeps building and building and building. And then like when you get to your, the big bad, you're like, okay.
Yeah, well, one other thing with the Nightcrawler, real quick.
Yeah.
On that first page, as I was reading it, I was just like, I had to like double check. I had to Google it. I was like, wait, was this Nightcrawler's first appearance or not? Because we're already into it. Wait a minute. I feel like, did I miss something? And like I said, that's just based on how much, X stuff I've read over the years that it all just feels so common and normal to me. But I was just like, wait a minute, was this it?
What I really liked about that, the Nightcrawler being on the first page, his first appearance, is that you don't get the sense that he's going to be like one of the heroes. You get the sense that he's going to be, a damsel in distress, as it were, someone who needs a hero, someone who needs someone to save him. And, I like the way that they set him up because, as I think pretty much anyone who's into Marvel Comics knows, X-Men is an allegory for civil rights. And, they show that a lot. And, when we have especially the new team members, the first one being Wagner, aka Nightcrawler, he's, as you say, right in the thick of it. He is discriminated against for no reason at all. And, like this is just like, okay, perfect. It's like, it's barely even veiled that this is an allegory. It's just sort of like, hey, we're saying mutant instead of whatever it is, like in real life. So yeah, and that's really cool. And what I liked about this, like you guys were saying, the story starts off with Professor X just gathering all these new mutants. And you're thinking to yourself, like, how is he finding these new mutants? And, well, I guess he explains it the same way he found the island mutant who we didn't like. I was just sort of like, oh, we're going to go to, what was it? Krakow or Krakoa? Krakoa, right? Krakow is a real place. Krakoa is not a real place. Okay, so yeah, there last I checked, there are no islands that have become sentient and try to eat people who visit. So I mean, I don't know.
I'm aware of.
Not that
you wouldn't know, they wouldn't get away.
This Earth sucks.
Not that I know of, but I mean, look, I have not been to a whole lot of places. I've only been to 2 continents, so that leaves a lot. That leaves a lot of space unexplored. So, but I mean, I guess I'll go from what I can recall reading last night, and we'll see how good my reading retention is without my without my synopsis in front of me. So, like I said, Professor X rounds all these mutants up, and he goes, "Okay, well, here's what happened. We lost the X-Men team. We don't know what happened to them, and we need your help to find them." So they're like, all right, and what's his name? Sunfire?
Sunfire,
right?
yes.
Sunfire, right. I fucking hate Sunfire.
Why?
I
Why
just
do you hate Sunfire? What did he ever do to you?
What did he ever do?
He's a jerk.
He's such an asshole.
I mean, he is.
I'm like,
jerk, but
like, why is he? And so a big theme, despite the whole like allegory of X-Men being about civil rights, is that they explicitly say, I'm not going to help a white man. It was him and what was his name? Proudstar. Proudstar was also saying, I'm not helping a white man. And then they like, apparently they're very easily swayed into helping.
Basically,
because,
yes.
oh, you're such a coward. Hey, how dare you call me a coward? All right, fine, I'll help. And,
they totally Marty McFly'd him.
Oh, what's the matter, chicken? So what happened after that? So, we need help finding the X-Men. And then Cyclops tells another flashback about how Professor X found a mutant with his machine the name escapes me, but his machine
Cerebro.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cerebro. Well, that makes sense. That is the Cerebro. So his machine found a crazy mutant force on this island of Krakoa. So they go and they visit Krakoa, and Cyclops is like, "Oh, where did all my friends go? I found myself mysteriously back on my ship, flying back to Professor X, and my eyes don't shoot lasers anymore." And then when he gets back to Professor X, his eyes shoot lasers crazier than ever before. And what I love is that he covers his eyes with his hands, and you see the lasers just kind of shooting every direction. I'm like, wow, he must have very, very durable hands for them not to be burned off. So
I thought the art was really on point for those scenes too.
yeah, it was
I like
really
the way
cool.
they showed Cyclops' eyes, like as he had the
Mhm.
visor off.
It's like his just red eyes. Like you never see him without a visor, right? It's
Hardly.
just
Very
just for
rarely.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, they get the team, the new X-Men, and very much like in Contest of Champions, they break up into groups and they all find like they get like different things that are in the way, and then they discover from this temple that came up out of nowhere that the old X-Men team has been held captive and is being devoured by the island itself. And Cyclops was tricked into bringing more X-Men. And, well, long story short, I guess the Beast isn't there anymore, which they make very brief reference to. But Iceman is able to make a surfboard for them that they all climb aboard and helps them escape. And then they say, well, we just have one problem. What are we going to do with 13 X-Men? And then at the end, it says, well, I guess find out in the next issue. So
I was almost like waiting for Curb Your Enthusiasm music to start playing after they said, what are we going to do with 13 X-Men?
With 13 X-Men, roll credits. How did I do with the synopsis? Anything I left out?
No, pretty good.
Yeah, nailed it.
I mean, it was a very high gloss, which is what you really want from a synopsis. You don't want it.
Yeah,
Again, you don't want panel 3 where they have so and so and so and so
Exactly,
doing
right,
this. Like, no, I mean,
Yeah.
all what's really kind of crazy, and you may not know this, John,
Mhm.
but in the current storyline, it's called the whole X-Men universe that's right now. They live on this island of Krakoa.
I did not
So
know that.
they're doing like the fall of Krakoa. That's the
Mhm.
whole story. It's become a sovereign nation in the last couple of years. They moved all the mutants from all over the world. They've collected them to this nation, and the rage of racism and all the other isms that you have has culminated in a single group called Orchid, and
Okay.
they're trying to wipe out all the mutants. So like it really kind of it's gone full circle where you have this evil island trying to kill them to where they're living on the island, and there's also another like a mirror to this island called Arcoa or right? Yeah,
Arico, I think, right?
Rico, yeah, right. And there's even more mutants on that one, and it's in a different dimension. So it's like they've really built upon this first story, and they flushed out a lot more details, just like Charles Xavier actually wiped Cyclops' memories of the events. So what he's recalling in this issue is not really what happened, but that's what he's implanted in his head. So it's crazy to see how this many years later
they're still building off of it. Yep.
Exactly.
Every panel that that Krakoa was in, I was thinking about the new stuff. I was like, oh man, this is so different than what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Well, right? I had an advantage. I mean, first of all, I've never read this before. Last night, I never read it. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll get to see what it is. I did not know, despite it being on the cover, which I guess I did not pay all that close attention to. I didn't know that the original team was actually in this book. I thought that it was just like, okay, Xavier is calling for new mutants because the old team left, and they're in another comic. What is that? New Mutants or what is that?
X Factor.
X Factor. That's the one. Yes,
yeah,
X Factor.
Right.
So
they had so many spinoffs, it's ridiculous.
Well, I guess spoiler alert. That's what.
But that wasn't until much later.
Right. Well, what did they do? Because I did not read ahead. What did they do with 13 X-Men?
You have to read issue number 2 to find out.
I was saying I want to break out issue number 94 and kind of read that next, but I got to be very careful when I do it. It's been a long time reading it.
Yes.
Well, you got to be careful not to get like a paper cut or something. Is that?
I barely want to touch it. I feel like I got to put gloves on.
It's that
Uh,
rare. And
well, I'll tell you what. Um, this is something that we do, when it's not possible to get an actual physical copy of it. I send screenshots out. I will send you screenshots of number 94. So
Yeah,
you
let's
don't
do that. I
so,
don't
so
want
you
to take
don't
mine out of the
so you don't
bag.
have to take it out of the thing and destroy it and then lose your third $3,500 comic to
But as with all X titles, they tend to whittle down the characters over a
yeah,
certain amount of
yeah,
issues.
yeah.
in issue number 2 of Giant Size, that's where you see Sentinels for one of the first times, and pre-mutated Beast
Mhm.
is in it, so it's human form Beast, um,
Yes.
Iceman,
Yes.
all of them, Jean Grey or Miss Marvel or whatever her nickname was at the time,
Mhm.
because who the heck knows? I can't remember anymore.
It wasn't Phoenix yet.
No, it was not Phoenix. I don't. I think it was Miss Marvel at the time.
Yeah, Marvel
So,
Girl. Right?
or
Yeah.
Marvel Girl. That's it. Thank you, Marvel Girl. So I think she's still going by the Marvel Girl Monarch, and it's interesting to see because, like, literally issue 2, it's just like a week later, and all other kinds
Mhm.
of crazy shit's happening, and they don't really make reference to Arkoa again or Krakoa,
Oh
and
yeah.
it just it pops up from time to time throughout the decades, and then they really jumped in feet first with the mutant nation of Arkoa and all of that, and they colonized Mars, or they were trying to colonize Mars. So
Was it
they
Rise of the Powers of X or something like the House of X and Powers of
House
X?
of X, yes, the House of X, and now like they're doing the Fall of X,
Yeah, now we're in
Mhm.
the Fall of X.
right? And then later this year they're doing an X-Men reboot, so it'll kind of like start all over again. I will say what always got me is the fact that many of these mutants were Omega level mutants, and for those our listeners who don't know what Omega level mutants are, is basically they are nigh unstoppable if they put effort into it. Like
Mhm.
Iceman could theoretically kill everybody on the planet Earth just thinking hard enough.
Ah.
So what gets me is the fact that they're like, "Oh, we're struggling." Like you guys can literally kill everybody. Like
Yeah.
that's not
At
even
this
a
point, though,
maybe,
Iceman hasn't fulfilled all of his powers yet. Though that didn't
right?
happen. I feel like until like almost like 2010 or something like that. Really.
But I
Something like that.
also, I also, I suppose that it's just sort of like if you're a superhero and you have the superhero mentality, you're not going to think to yourself, "Oh, I could just kill everyone around me and everything will be fine." Like you're not going to want to do that. You will want to be on the level, and it's like you want to play by the same rules as everyone else because you're a superhero, not a super villain.
Not Wolverine and Sunfire.
Yeah, here, let me introduce you to Cable and Bishop.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you. So I noticed this last night too after I read uh the whole issue where Sunfire was basically just like an asshole to everyone.
Mhm.
Even when he said, "I'm not going to help you because I'm not going to risk my life to help, my fellow X-Men," and then decided to come back and said, "I don't need to explain myself." I was like, why is this guy here? He's just he's just such an asshole. I don't like him. I don't like it when he's on a panel. I don't like when he's talking because all he does is basically just say, "I don't owe you anything. I'm doing everything for myself." Maybe he's not an evil person, but aside from that, he's a total asshole and not a fun character to read. But what I was saying, on the cover, he does not appear. He's not on the cover.
Nope.
So I'm like, all right, well, that's got to be symbolic of something or like something to come where he's probably just going to be like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll see you in Contest of Champions. And other than that, peace.
It's kind of a
Well,
character trait that they've kept going with him throughout the years. He's always been a bit of a jerk ever
he's
since.
always right. He's always been a jerk, and then he's
Yeah.
come out of the closet, and he's still a bit of a jerk. And you're just
Uh,
like, you think they'd mellow the guy out a little bit. Most characters they do grow and mature, but if you look at all of these characters, they most of them have evolved over the years, except for Sunfire. He's just less. He's just asshole or less asshole. So
Well, Warpath kind of took a
mm,
excuse me, not Warpath, Proudstar. Well,
Proudstar,
Warpath's his brother.
yeah, his
Proud
brother,
Star. Yeah.
yeah. And then you get, but just speaking of Proudstar, his
I know
brother,
he's back again now.
yeah, he's
You know,
resurrected.
I do recall one thing that I forgot to mention in my synopsis, and that is how they escaped the island to begin with, like how they defeated him. that was one thing that I wasn't quite getting. Like, what exactly was happening here? They were like sending energy into the island and like exploding it. Was that it?
Like overloading it, because what
Yeah.
they were saying is that he was hungry and
Hmm.
they were just kind of overwhelming it, which didn't make a
Hmm.
lot of sense. But yeah, all right,
Right.
whatever.
It
Yeah.
was kind of a cause to the end, basically. They're like, all right, let's
Right.
write something out here that doesn't make any sense, but nobody will really care.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Well,
He goes flying into space. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes perfect sense. All right.
what I also found it very amusing when the island started talking to the people. I'm like, that just makes him so much less intimidating.
Yeah.
The fact that it talks, I'm like, just have it try to eat the things, and then the people slowly figure out what's going on without it saying, "Oh, fools, you fell into my trap." It's like, really though? Like, I don't know. And
Yeah,
his
they've definitely cut that out now.
and he's very articulate too.
Yeah.
He's not just like, "Oh, good, X-Men, hungry." It's like he's like the most well-spoken character in the whole book.
Yeah, considering it's just a sentient plant, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is a thing. And he's like having this whole dialogue.
Mhm.
And yet, flash forward to now, they have a character that communicates with him because he doesn't talk to anybody, which
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense, but that's a
Yeah.
thing.
Well, that's how they started it, and that's why first issues are so, I guess, sought after because they were like, "Oh, that's before they made it good. I want this."
Yeah. Well, going back
Sorry.
to the first scene really quick with Nightcrawler, were you
Mhm.
guys expecting him to like kind of just bamf out of there? I was like, oh, I guess they haven't
I was
introduced
kind
that
of thinking that
yet.
too. Yeah, right. I'm like,
The-
why is he not doing anything? And he's like,
in the
I'm just going
first,
to jump into the crowd. Dude, you literally teleport.
I mean, I guess I didn't know him well enough.
He's a
Again,
teleporter. So I was
again,
just like, hey, you can get out
again,
of here, dude.
again, like I said, yes,
Oh, you
well,
can't see it. I literally have a Nightcrawler tattoo and
nice.
a Bamf.
A Bamf,
I have
right,
both.
right, and that's yeah, and that's kind of like he displayed his ability when he was working with Sunfire. He was like, "Oh, I'm over here now. I'm over here," And Sunfire was like, "Yeah, big fucking deal." And what were they? They were dealing with the giant bird. Was that it?
Yeah,
Yeah. And then
Sunfire fried it.
Sunfire was just like, and Nightcrawler was like, "Oh, well, shit. Okay, I guess your idea was better."
Well,
So
like don't get me wrong,
yeah.
like Nightcrawler is
Mhm.
very much the heart and soul of the team. But if you look at his
Right.
powers and abilities, he's a transporter.
Yeah.
And unless he's using a sword or in was it the Ultimate Universe, they trained him to be a sniper, so he
Mhm.
was like some pretty lethal character. Yeah, otherwise like here he's just like, look, I can poof. Like, all right,
Can
whatever.
poof. I
And
mean,
then Sunfire's like, I'm
yeah.
gonna turn him into roast chicken. We're done.
Cool. Yeah, there were those three challenges. One was like rocks were flying after them, right? Then there was like a giant lobster and a bird, and what was there was a fourth one, right? What was the other one?
Was
I
it?
don't know.
Lobster. Hang on, I gotta go look.
Let me see here.
Just the plants themselves, I guess. The
Yeah, I was about to
island,
say. I think it was the vines or something, right?
the
It was vines.
vines,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. And then
Yeah.
crabs, rocks, the birds.
Cyclops dealt with the vines along with Proudstar, uh, and Cyclops was just able to destroy all the vines with his heat ray vision. So yeah, that was cool. That was a good one. Um, so let's before we go on about anything else, I does anyone know why they used Wolverine, who had just been established and very firmly established as like a very powerful villain? Why all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, let's take that exact story and we'll get Professor X to say, you have a chance to save the world." And Wolverine was like, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to do that." Like,
I never really took him as a villain in the Hulk appearance. More so,
No,
just
I took him more as a neutral character.
yeah,
yeah,
He's tasked with doing a thing and he's doing said thing.
yeah,
In this
following
instance, it
government
was
orders.
yeah, he's a
yeah.
brainwash. He's literally brainwashed.
Okay.
So he's just following orders like a good little robot, essentially.
Good little
And
ribbit.
yeah, he's a little ribbit,
Ribbit.
and he's just following what he's tasked to do, which in this case is find giant monster green thing
Mhm.
stomping around Canada. That's what he does.
I think as soon as Wolverine jumped on the scene, he was automatically very popular with the readers.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to bring him into this. I mean,
They
I
wanted
they
to
definitely
find
made the right move
they
historically
wanted
looking
to
at it.
find something to do with him. And, I like him because I mean, I guess, yeah, if you look at it that way in his Hulk appearances, he really wasn't a villain. He was following orders. He was Weapon X. So I guess what was he created or something?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, how can a physical creation such as that be evil? It's just programmed. It's, like the person programming him is evil.
Yeah, he had his mind so many times as they've gone over
Right.
in his more recent history, I guess.
Right.
And undone
Right.
again and done again.
And done again and done again.
He's finally back
But
to he knows everything now. But
Yeah, now
you
he-
know,
but I love his personality too, because he is a good guy. He wants to help the greater good, but you know, he's the kind of guy that you're just sort of like, get back the fuck off of him, because he'll take his claw and, like, shove it up your chin and be like, "Hey, what's that supposed to mean, bub?" So, and I like that he calls people bub.
Yep.
That's another fun one.
That is a great move of his when he takes two of his claws under your chin and
Yeah.
says, "Want me to pop the third one?"
and then you go, "Wait, what do you mean the third one?" And you're like, you see their eyes open up, and they're like, "No, no, 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 we're good."
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, I suppose, as almost always, when I say I want to do an episode about this, it's about something that I haven't really read before, and that's why when we did Contest of Champions, which both of you were sadly absent from, uh I had never read it before. And then I read the whole thing in one day, and I was like, wow, this is such trash. This is garbage. It is
Fair.
like, it is so bad. But so that's why
It was
I
a
like,
comic made to sell toys.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. It was
Well,
a tie-in.
it was a comic made to sell toys, but I didn't even know this. It was the first ever multi-limited series, like multi-issue, whatever.
Mhm.
I didn't know that. It was the first one. And I was like, well, I guess
I did not know that either.
yeah, they get better. That one was really bad. It was confusing. It was dumb. But my point here for, for bringing this up is that it's never the intention to say, like, okay, I'm going to do an episode about this because I know it's great. Every now and again, it'll be like, oh, first appearance of Superman, like from way back in the day, like those kind of, like, okay, I read it, but most of them, it's an excuse to get me to read it. And then I make my assessment. And I have to say, this Giant Size X-Men #1, I liked it. I liked it. Because I thought it was going to be more of this is where the transition will be completed, but it's more along the lines of, we are in the middle of a transition here, and this is the first time you're going to see the new team members, but we're not getting rid of the old X-Men, but we're making the transition, and you're kind of seeing the start of it here rather than the formation of the new team, which I thought was pretty cool about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was also thinking while I was reading this that imagine if this came out today. I could just see the trolls coming out so hard about this issue. Like, oh, you have to check off all the diversity boxes. That's why there's all these new characters in here.
Oh, yeah, sure. Oh, goodness me. Well, okay. Let's be 100% honest about that. All of them are just like the ones who aren't white, with the exception of Storm, because she's actually good, I guess, but the ones who aren't white hate white people. So it's like, okay, let's check off that diversity box. Be like, we are in our own box here. The white people hate the colored people. The colored people hate the white people. Let's make a team. Cool.
Let's make a team of
We got
everybody who
somebody
hates
who's blue,
everybody
too.
else.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you have a furry blue guy.
A furry blue guy.
I think Colossus is the only one that doesn't hate anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a good guy. He broke a tractor to save his sister. That was nice of him.
Yeah, I was about to say we got a little cameo of Magic there.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
That was the first appearance of Magic before Magic became Magic.
Magic,
Yep.
magic,
No pun
magic.
intended.
Just plain old Ilyana or Snowflake.
Ah,
The
Ileana.
snowflake.
Was that her first time ever? Oh, obviously, I guess if it was his
Yeah.
first time, then it would have had to
Yeah.
have been her first time. So yeah, yeah, cool, cool. I mean, I
Then she
have
gets abducted and tortured, and becomes magic.
I read the Magic 4-part limited series. It was quite disturbing, and
Yes,
you
yes, it
know,
is.
I think I bought the original for like $12, like all 4 issues wrapped up in a nice little bag, and yeah, that's that.
Well, you know what I like about like the again the obscurity, like that's
Hmm.
magic that we all have now learned about
Hmm.
and have kind of, lack of a better term, grown up with, because this came out in 1975, so
Hmm.
she came about way after the fact. But to see where she started to like where we are now, and the fact that she is one of the more magical, she is the sorcerer supreme of her
Hmm.
dimension, which is just mind-boggling if you think about it, because she's like this really OP magic user. Then she comes here and you're like, oh well, she's just a dumb mutant, and then she just busts out a soul sword that's bigger than her and just can lay waste to
Bam!
everybody.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
they've
It's
developed her into one of the
crazy.
most badass characters in the X universe.
Oh yeah,
yes.
and that's what I like about some of these X-Men is they're just like that, like one stub toe away from blowing a hole in the planet.
Mm. I wanna kind of like uh talk about why they felt the need to make a brand new X-Men team. I'm sure that this is kind of fairly common knowledge among Marvel readers, but the original X-Men was not popular. It was popular enough that it went on for like what was it, like, I don't know, 8 years, 7 years, and then they just
They
kind of
start reprinting.
yeah, and they just kind of like stopped it suddenly. They they made like some cameos, like there was Marvel team up with Spider-Man and the original X-Men team, which was 2 years after the original run had ended. So it's like they pop up every now and again, but the truth is, with that team, they were not popular. People weren't buying the books, people didn't care about them. It just wasn't interesting, I suppose. So they were like, yeah, well, you know what we need to do? We need to come up with characters that are much more interesting than this original team, and maybe we can resurrect the popularity or create the popularity in the first place of X-Men, and I think they did just that with with this new team.
Oh yeah, it took off after that.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Right after that, we get into the Chris Claremont years, which are considered like the holy Bible of X Men issues.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
how dare you speak ill of him? Like you may like say anything like, "Oh, this is whatever X, Y, and Z," and people
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
lose their
What'd you say about
mind.
Claremont?
Claremont's a saint. He designed every blah blah blah. And you're like,
Chris
okay,
Claremont. All right.
calm it down. Pump the brakes here, guys.
Hey, there we go.
Claremont.
There we are. All right. Whoa. What is it that Wolverine says to his horse? Whoa, easy there, handsome. Or something.
Something
Is
like
it,
that. Yeah.
is that well, I guess if there's anything else that anyone else, excuse me, is there anything that anyone would like to say beyond this about the book?
Comic books are dumb. No, I'm just kidding. Words are
kind of-
hard.
Words are hard, man. And especially from what I understand, from what I have discovered, now I have excellent vision naturally, so I can read comic books. But as it turns out, people who
With an
don't,
X.
an X, yes, people
Excellent.
people who don't have good vision apparently have a lot of trouble reading comic books because the print is too small or whatever it is, and like it just never occurred to me. So I consider myself to be among the lucky ones who can actually read what's happening. Why are you pointing to yourself, Keith?
I have glasses and I have horrible vision, and I've never had that problem. That's interesting.
Do your glasses give you good vision?
Well, I hope so. Otherwise, it makes life really hard.
Well, I would say that if your glasses give you good vision, then that is an overcome dilemma.
Fair.
Yes.
Yeah, no, the
But yeah.
glasses definitely help the print. I find that some books these days put the inking like in weird colors, like
Yeah.
almost like a red over a black sometimes, or like a blue and a yellow. And I'm like, even with my glasses, I can't read this. This looks like a
Yeah,
blur.
Yeah.
there was a comic, The Atom, which
Uh-huh.
came out was a couple of years ago, and they would do monologues on every panel and
Oy
just
vey.
word vomit. And don't get me wrong, it was the artwork was insane. And then
Mm.
you'd have this one big panel, like a full size, and he would just have this giant monologue. That gets a little word vomity. Like that will
Yeah.
actually give me a little bit of a headache because I'm straining for that period of time.
And it's also,
So,
yeah, I'm not reading a comic book so I can read paragraphs,
right,
right?
exactly. I don't need a
So
dissertation.
I will say this, like this page where the island first comes to life and like, everyone goes crazy. I could understand if your vision isn't that great, it's really hard to see what's going on. So, I sympathize, but I'm glad I can see it.
Oh,
And
Glad I
it's
got
also very,
glasses so I can see it.
yeah, I have glasses, I can see it. It's very
Yeah.
Man Thing reminiscent,
yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because came out way before. When was the first appearance of Man Thing? Do you remember, Jason?
Not
That was
offhand.
early 80s, right? Man Thing.
It was definitely later than this for sure. I just
Yeah.
don't.
Right. So
Yeah,
they go from this to Man Thing, and there's like they look like they're could be related.
Well, I mean, I can't say that I'm surprised because they have the same writers, they have the same artists. These people all work on all these different stories. Things are going to start looking like each other.
I'm gonna blame Costanza.
It's
I am
Costanza's fault.
100%.
It's Ween and Cock. It's all their fault.
These guys.
Damn Ween and Cock. Um. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's
Well,
that's
that just
that.
brought your brain to a halt.
I
Yeah, that
it
just
it
derailed the entire conversation.
it really did. I'm just like it's just there's two Weens and one Cock, and then a Costanza.
I feel like this should be an episode of Seinfeld.
Yes, exactly. It's like how can I write a story with two Weens and a Cock?
All right.
I don't know. It's
Although
my
now I have Seinfeld's voice in my head.
okay.
George. You know, like it's the very yeah. I
What am I
apologize.
writing here? You
I
ever
apologize,
notice?
fans, for my bad Seinfeld.
You ever notice how a lot of Marvel comics look the same? What's the deal with that?
Oh my god. I don't understand why they all have new powers.
And on
Again, I
that,
apologize.
and on that note, I mean, like, I don't suppose we could top Seinfeld X-Men comics.
I
That's a
think
hell
we
of a
got to go
crossover.
out on a high note.
We
Yes.
gotta go out on a high note. So
Costanza.
yeah, Costanza. It's like by Menon. Okay. Jason, tell the folks where you can be found if you want to be found.
I could be found on Facebook, Jason Gurin. Last name is Gurin, and I'm an admin on a page called Comic Book Villains. Come and chat.
Nice. Keith.
Yes. I live under a rock in a nice warm place called the beach. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually a member of that same group as Jason, I think, as are you, John.
I am as well, yes.
I
And
wrote them in.
Yes, and when I'm not harassing people in that place, I'm on another podcast. I was really about to say the Hour of Comics because I'm so used to promoting Hours and not the other
Yes.
one.
Not that one, yes.
Right. It's Happiness and Darkness. We review superhero movies. We are kind of mixing it up a little bit this year. We're doing a little bit of anime as well. So don't be surprised. We just did the first animated Wonder Woman. You can find us on all the streaming platforms, Spotify, and so on and so forth. Give us a listen, give us a rating. We are also on the Twitter, and I swear I will not refer to it as X because that is just dumb. And is the Happiness and Darkness. We are also on Facebook. Drop a comment, a like, anything. I'm usually pretty active on the board. If somebody drops a comment on our page or review, I'm more than welcome to, chat it up with them. Boom.
Boom. As for me, what's the deal? No, I am.
What's the deal with our host?
What's the deal with X? Twitter being X now?
Oh, God.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. let's see. So who am I? I'm John Seymour, Jon space Seymour. That's me on Facebook. I am making a goofy smile and doing finger guns into the camera. So that's me on Facebook if you want to find me. I have another podcast, Bullshit Hour with John Seymour, and since have done a couple of episodes, 2, 3 episodes, a subsidiary of Bullshit Hour with John Seymour called This Podcast is Lamb Chops, where we basically just take any form of media, movies, TV shows, comic books, whatever, and talk about how shitty they all are. And it's so much fun. I love doing it. So yeah, like when I'm not doing this, when I'm not doing regular bullshit hour, I'm doing that. And I just basically spend my life talking about how much I hate media of any kind. So that's that. That can also just be found on the Bullshit Hour with John Seymour platform. My band Mad Tea Party is playing a gig February 17th at 8 p.m. at the Orange Lantern in Paramus, New Jersey. So don't miss that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
My old stomping ground.
Yes. Well, it should be your current stomping ground on February 17th. Come out from the beach.
Under my nice warm rock.
Under your nice warm rock on the beach. Greg Vorob, as always, has a podcast called Star Trek The Undiscovered Podcast. I'm supposed to be on that show at some point. It might be tomorrow. I don't know. But, if it is tomorrow, I need to get on whatever episode he needs me to watch for
Probably.
that. Yeah. Because, he just likes to pick on me a lot. He likes to say, I know you don't really like Star Trek that much, so be on my show 800 times. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. At the end of this upcoming season, I believe it's the second season.
Correct.
I am hosting the final episode. It's about the first ever Star Trek comic book. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I believe, since it's technically not my show, but I'm going to be hosting it, that's why I'm saying I believe it's going to be you, Jason, and you, Keith, who are going to be on the panel. Why are you flipping me off, Keith?
No, I'm just pointing.
I see. I'm
Index
sorry.
finger.
Okay, yes, I understand. Okay.
Like, because you said me and
Right.
I pointed like me.
Right.
What?
I believe it's going to be Jason and Keith and me and Greg as the quote unquote guest.
Huh.
But
Interesting.
I'm going to see what is actually going to happen. So, if it doesn't happen that way, then my apologies to everyone listening. But yeah, that seems to be about the size of it.
The giant size of it.
The giant size of it.
Giant oversized.
Thanks for reading the Seinfeld episode of Giant Size X-Men #1. That was a lot of fun.
Our extra special guest, Seinfeld.
Extra special guest Jerry Seinfeld and George Costanza. That being said, I'd like to say goodnight to Jason, goodnight to Keith, and I have no guest to say goodnight to, so I'm saying goodnight to everyone else, and I will see you next time. We'll all see you next time, as a matter of fact. So good night.
Au revoir.